Kieran Lockhart stepped out of the black SUV and immediately regretted it. His polished Italian loafers sank into the soft sand like they didn't belong. Because they didn't. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, adjusting his sunglasses and glancing down the beach at the line of mismatched wooden shacks. He was supposed to be in Miami by now, not stranded in some sleepy Florida beach town where the only thing on the schedule was a lunch meeting that had just canceled. Still, his assistant had insisted, "You need to actually eat, Mr. Lockhart. There's a place here the locals love, you'll thank me." He didn't thank people easily. Kieran started walking toward the shack with the hand-painted sign that read, "Crystal's Catch." The smell of grilled fish and something tangy drifted on the breeze. His stomach growled traitor. Inside, it was nothing like the sleek restaurants he was used to. There were picnic tables, paper napkins, and a chalkboard menu. And behind the counter stood a woman in a sun-faded tank top, her honey-brown hair swept into a messy bun, a smear of flour on her cheek. She looked up. Their eyes met. "Seat yourself," she called, her voice low and clear. "I'll be right with you." Kieran blinked. She wasn't a server, she was the chef. He sat at the solitary table near the open window, the ocean breeze blowing in. He watched her move, confident, quick, not trying to impress anyone. She plated a sandwich, then turned to pour a drink. When she finally walked over to him, wiping her hands on a towel, she gave him a once-over that wasn't exactly impressed. "Did you take a wrong turn from Wall Street, or are you just trying to make the rest of us feel underdressed?" she asked. Kieran raised an eyebrow. "I was told this place had good food." "It does." She nodded toward the chalkboard. "No substitutions unless you're allergic to something." "I'll take the shrimp tacos, whatever's cold to drink," she scribbled it down. "Coming right up, Mr. Wall Street," he almost laughed. Almost. 10 minutes later, she placed the plate in front of him without fanfare. The tacos were fresh, colorful, and smelled like heaven. He took a bite. Holy hell. It was perfect. Kieran looked up, stunned. She was already back behind the counter, pulling something from the oven. The heat made her skin glow, and there was something about the way she moved completely at home, like this shack was her whole world. He didn't mean to say it out loud. "You're really good at this." She glanced over her shoulder. "Thanks, I'd hope so. Been running this place since I was 22. "How old are you now?" "Old enough to know better than to answer that question." He smiled a little. "Fair." She walked over again, wiping her hands. "Where are you from anyway?" "New York." She gave him an exaggerated look. "Shocker. I'm not staying long," he said. "Just got rerouted here because of a storm. Should have been gone this morning. Yet here you are, eating my food. Guess the universe had plans for your taste buds." He let out a laugh before he could stop it. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated for a second. "Kyer Rivers." "Kieran Lockhart." She raised an eyebrow. "Lockhart, that sounds like businessman with a private jet kind of name." He looked at her. "You'd be right." Her face didn't change. "Well, businessman with a private jet, welcome to the best damn shack in Florida." He stayed longer than he meant to. Hours passed without him realizing it. She told him about the fishermen who brought in her daily catch, about how her dad built the shack with his own hands before he passed. She didn't ask about his job, his money, his board meetings. And for once, he didn't offer. When a group of regulars walked in, she gave him a quick glance. "You okay here for a minute?" He nodded, watching her work the crowd. She was warm, funny, sharp. Everyone loved her. She brought out a pie and passed around slices like she'd known them all her life. He was still sitting there when she came back. "You're not in a rush, are you?" "No. You're strange." He leaned back. "Why? Guys like you don't usually hang around places like this. They grab a to-go box and leave in a Benz." "I took an SUV," she laughed. "Same thing." He stood. "I'll come back tomorrow, same time." She paused, eyes narrowing just slightly. "All right, Mr. Lockhart, but next time wear flip-flops." He looked down at his shoes, then back at her. "Sure. For you, I'll try." He didn't know it then, but that was the moment it started, the slow, unexpected unraveling of everything he thought he knew, and Kyer Rivers. She had no idea the man who just promised to wear flip-flops was worth well over $2 billion. The next day, Kieran returned just before noon, walking barefoot along the sand with his shoes in hand. The sun was high, the air thick with salt and heat, and the scent of grilled citrus wafted from the shack long before it came into view. Kaya stood at the side window, elbow deep in a crate of bright red snapper. Her hair was pulled into a low braid, and she wore a sleeveless denim shirt knotted at the waist, revealing sun-browned skin and a tattoo just above her hip, a line of script he couldn't quite make out. "You're early," she said, not looking up. "You're observant." She glanced at him then, her gaze dropping briefly to his bare feet. "You took me seriously. You asked. I aim to deliver." She pulled out a fish and began scaling it with swift, practiced hands. "You always this accommodating with strangers, only the ones who give me the best meal I've had in years." Kaya huffed a breath and motioned toward the table by the window. "You want something or just here to flatter the chef? You choose for me," he said as he sat. "Surprise me, you sure?" "Some people can't handle spicy. I've handled billion-dollar mergers with 3 countries. I think I can handle a little heat." That earned him a look, but she said nothing more, disappearing behind the counter. Kieran watched the way she moved, strategic, efficient, like someone who didn't waste energy on anything unnecessary. She didn't perform for customers. She simply worked, and people respected that. When she returned, she placed a plate in front of him with blackened fish over tropical rice and grilled pineapple. Then she folded her arms and leaned against the edge of the counter. "So what's a guy like you doing rerouted through a place like this?" Private pilot refused to fly through the Gulf storm system. "Grounded us in Tampa. I saw this place on the drive south. That storm's still moving slow. You probably won't be out for another few days. Then I guess I'll be eating well in the meantime." She rolled her eyes and walked away before he could say anything else. Kieran ate slowly, savoring every bite. The spices burned just enough and the pineapple cut through with a sharp sweetness. He'd had meals that cost more than most people's rent, but none had made him feel like this, satisfied in a way that went deeper than his stomach. When she returned to clear his plate, he leaned forward. "What else do you do, Kaya?" "Besides run the best-kept secret on this coast." She slid the plate away and tossed a towel over her shoulder. "Fix boats when they break down, paint when I have time, and I surf at sunrise when the tide's right." "You paint? Don't look so surprised." "Just because I fry fish doesn't mean I can't handle a brush." "I didn't say I was surprised. You didn't have to." He tilted his head. "What do you paint?" "Things I've seen, places I've imagined, mostly ocean stuff. I just finished a piece last week, storm clouds over the bay." "It's hanging in the back if you want to see it." "I do." She hesitated. "All right, but don't go pretending you know art unless you actually do." "I don't pretend. Ever." She led him through a narrow hallway behind the kitchen into a small room filled with natural light. The walls were lined with canvases, some abstract, others vividly detailed. The one she'd mentioned hung in the center, a roiling sky of charcoal and indigo, the waves beneath it crashing in furious motion. Kieran stepped closer. "It's intense." That's what it felt like. "I was out on the south dock when it rolled in. The wind felt like it could tear you in half. You captured that." She crossed her arms, watching him. "You don't talk like someone who grew up near the water." "I didn't." "Let me guess, penthouse view, doorman, polished floors that echo when you walk too fast. You forgot the elevator with the fingerprint scanner." She gave a short laugh. "Of course." "What about you?" he asked. "You ever leave this place?" "Once. Went to Chicago when I was 19 with a guy I thought I'd marry." "What happened?" "He cheated on me with a bartender and left me with a rent bill I couldn't pay. I came home." Kieran didn't say anything for a moment. "Then I rebuilt this place," she added. "With some help. Got my license, started cooking, and never looked back." "Do you ever think about leaving again?" "Only when the ice machine breaks and I want to throw it into the sea." He laughed, but her gaze remained steady. "You're not exactly the type to stick around," she said. "You don't know what type I am." "Maybe, but I know enough." He stepped closer, the air between them shifting. "What if I told you I'm not in a rush to leave anymore?" I'd say you need to check your flight schedule. I canceled it. That stopped her. You what? I canceled my departure. I'm staying through the weekend. She didn't look pleased or flattered. If anything, she looked wary. Why? Because I want to see what else you paint, and maybe try that pie you were hoarding yesterday. Kaya narrowed her eyes. You're not charming, you know. Never claimed to be. She turned, but not before he caught the hint of something new behind her expression, something uncertain. As she walked back into the kitchen, Kieran stood in the room full of her art, the scent of salt and lemon still clinging to the air. He hadn't lied. He wasn't leaving. He just hadn't figured out why that didn't scare him yet. The storm hit just after sunrise. Not the one that had grounded his jet that had already passed through the Gulf and moved north. This was a local squall, sudden and sharp, tearing across the marina like it had a personal grudge against every docked boat and palm tree in sight. Kieran stood beneath the awning of Crystal's catch, rain sheeting down in thick silver ropes as thunder cracked over the ocean. He'd made it there just before the skies opened, still barefoot, carrying 2 coffees in a paper tray and a bag of warm croissants from a French bakery he'd found off the highway. Kaya emerged from the kitchen, tying her apron tighter. You brought breakfast? She asked, eyeing the tray. I figured no one's coming out in this. Thought maybe you'd want to eat with company. She took a coffee and leaned against the counter, blowing on the lid. I didn't peg you as a bakery guy, she said. I'm not. But I asked the owner what her best seller was. She said the almond croissants. I said I'd take 2. Almond's my favorite, he looked at her. Lucky guess, don't flatter yourself yet, I haven't tried it. She took a bite, chewed slowly, then nodded once. Okay, you're forgiven for showing up before opening. I was hoping to see the sunrise. Guess the clouds beat me to it. You can barely see the shore in this mess, but I like it. The quiet. They sat at the window table, the shack empty except for them, the only sounds the rain hammering the roof and the occasional groan of waves crashing against the seawall. Kaya pulled her knees up onto the bench and wrapped her hands around her coffee cup like it was anchoring her. Can I ask you something? She said. He nodded. You said you canceled your flight. What's really keeping you here? He met her gaze. Does it bother you that I stayed? I didn't say that. But you're wondering what I want. I've had strangers get friendly before, especially when they're bored and reined in. I'm not bored. She studied him for a long moment before speaking again. You didn't answer the question. You want the truth, always. I don't know what's keeping me here, he said. But every time I think about leaving, I get this feeling like I'm walking away from something important. And I don't do that. Kaya looked down at her hands, her fingers tightening around the cup. I don't let people in easy, she said. I noticed. You don't get to walk in here with fancy coffee and a perfect jawline and suddenly make me forget that. Perfect jawline, she glanced up. Don't get smug. I'm just clarifying. She gave him a look, but there was something softer behind it now, something that hadn't been there 2 days ago. You're not like the others, she admitted. They usually want something. A story, a souvenir, a fling before they head back to their real lives. I'm not here for any of that. Then what are you here for? He hesitated. The answer was sitting right across from him, barefoot and stubborn and brilliant in ways she didn't even realize, but he couldn't say that. Not yet. I'm figuring it out. She nodded once, like that was enough for now. The storm lasted hours. They spent it holed up in the back room where her paintings hung, talking about everything except the things they were both clearly avoiding. She showed him a new canvas, still unfinished, streaked with shades of ochre and blue. He told her about his time in Tokyo, about the way the city never slept and how sometimes he didn't either. By the time the clouds cleared, the sun was dropping low over the water, casting everything in amber light. She walked him to the edge of the dock where the planks creaked beneath their steps. The sea was calmer now, the wind gentler. Tomorrow's supposed to be clear, she said. Then I'll be back. She gave a faint nod and turned to walk back to the shack. Kaya, she stopped, looking over her shoulder. Would you ever consider leaving here? She didn't answer for a long time. Depends who's asking, she said, and then she was gone. Kieran stood alone on the dock, the tide licking at the wood beneath his feet, and felt something shift in his chest. He didn't know what this was yet, but he knew it mattered. Kieran had never stayed anywhere this long without a purpose. Not without a boardroom, a deadline, or a deal waiting. But 3 days had passed since the storm, and he was still here, waking up before sunrise and walking barefoot to Kaya's shack before the fishermen finished unloading their catch. This morning she was already outside, crouched near a tangled crate of sea urchins, her hair braided in a rope down her back. He stopped a few paces away, watching as she reached into the crate with gloved hands, completely focused. "You always up this early?" he asked. She didn't look up. "Someone has to make sure the uni doesn't go to waste. It's a pain to clean, but people pay good money for it." He stepped closer, hands in his pockets. "You ever think about raising your prices? You could charge triple and still have a line down the beach." "I'm not interested in turning this into a tourist trap," she said, finally glancing up. "I know what it's worth, but I also know who I'm feeding. Locals. And the ones who can't afford to eat anywhere else." Kieran crouched beside her, ignoring the sting of gravel beneath his knees. "You're not running this place for profit. I'm running it for purpose." He stared at her for a moment. "That's not something most people say out loud." "Most people aren't me," he smiled, but she was already standing, carrying the crate toward the kitchen. By the time the sun hit full height, the shack was bustling. A few families had wandered in from the beach, wet towels slung over shoulders, sand clinging to their ankles. Kieran sat at his usual table by the window, sipping something cold and citrusy that Kaya had made without asking. When she slid into the seat across from him, wiping her hands on her apron, he leaned forward. "Tell me something you've never told anyone." She raised a brow. "That came out of nowhere. I'm serious. Something real." She tapped her fingers against the table, thinking, "All right. When I was a kid, I used to sneak out of the house after dark and swim out to the buoy just past the bay. I'd float there for hours. It was the only place that felt quiet enough for my head. Weren't you afraid of what was in the water? I was more afraid of what was in the house." He didn't speak for a moment. "Your dad," her jaw tensed. "He wasn't all bad, but he was hard. Especially after my mom left." Kieran didn't push. He just nodded once, the silence between them charged but not uncomfortable. She looked at him. "Your turn." He flexed his hands against the edge of the table. "I moved out when I was 17. Told my father I was going to college, but I never showed up. I started flipping properties with fake confidence and borrowed money. First year I lost everything I had, slept in my office on a futon with a broken leg." She tilted her head. "And now you fly private?" He gave a half shrug. "Eventually it worked, but I never forgot what it felt like to have nothing." Kaya studied him for a long beat, then she stood and reached for her apron ties. "Come with me." He followed her out the back, past the kitchen, down a narrow path through the dunes. They climbed a short bluff, the sea stretching out below in endless blue. She pointed to a small cottage tucked into the trees, whitewashed and weathered, its porch wrapped in flowering vines. "My mother left it to me," she said. "Only thing she gave me besides her eyes. I've been fixing it up slowly. When I'm not at the shack, I'm usually here." They stepped up onto the porch, and Kaya unlocked the door with a brass key that looked older than both of them. Inside, the air smelled faintly of salt and lavender. The space was small but open. Light spilled through wide windows, painting the floorboards gold. An easel stood in the corner, a half-finished canvas on it. Kieran walked over to it. The brushstrokes were bold sunlight breaking through clouds, a single figure standing at the edge of the water. The figure was tall, dark-haired, silhouetted by the dawn. "That's me," he said quietly. She nodded, arms crossed over her chest. "You've been painting me." "Only once. That morning you brought coffee. You didn't say anything for 10 minutes, just sat there like you belonged." He turned around. "Do I?" Her eyes met his. "Maybe." He stepped toward her. "I could stay." She didn't blink. "For how long?" "As long as it takes." "To do what?" "To find out if this is real." Kaya's breath caught. She looked down, then back up. "I don't want a fantasy, Kieran. I don't need someone to save me, I just want someone who doesn't leave when things get messy. I've had messy, he said. This is the clearest thing I've felt in years. She stepped forward close enough that their hands brushed. I don't know what this is yet, she whispered. I do. Then he kissed her. It wasn't rushed or hungry. It was slow, certain. The kind of kiss that only happens when two people have already chosen each other in ways they haven't dared say out loud. Her hands found his shoulders. His slid around her waist, gathering her to him like he already knew what it would be like to lose her and refused to let it happen. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. What are we doing? She asked. Something terrifying, he said. And beautiful. They stayed there until the light shifted, until the sun dipped below the trees and the breeze cooled against their skin. Later that night, under a sky scattered with stars, Kaya stood barefoot on the porch of the little cottage, paint still on her fingers, Kieran beside her with his jacket draped over her shoulders. I called my assistant, he said. Told her to cancel next week's meetings. She turned her head. What did she say? She told me it was about time. Kaya laughed, soft and low. He reached into his pocket and handed her a folded slip of paper. What's this? A lease agreement. For the property behind the shack. I bought it this morning. Figured you could use more room, build a studio. Expand the kitchen, whatever you want. She stared at the paper, stunned. You bought land for me? For us, he said. But only if you want that. She grabbed his face and kissed him again, fiercer this time, and just like that he knew this wasn't temporary. This wasn't a pause between flights. This was home, not the shack, not the cottage. Kaya. And this time he wasn't going anywhere. The first time Kaya saw Kieran in her world truly, and it wasn't on the dock or inside the shack. It was at the local fundraising auction 2 Saturdays later, hosted under strings of lights in the community center parking lot. The event was held every spring to raise money for marine conservation and to help repair the town's aging sea wall. She'd never seen him in a suit, not like this. Navy, tailored within an inch of its life, the collar of his shirt open just enough to make her heart skip. But it wasn't his clothes that got her. It was how he stood beside her, his hand resting at the small of her back, greeting everyone who approached like he'd been part of this town for years. No arrogance, no pretense, just calm confidence like he belonged. I feel like I should be warning you, she said, eyeing the clipboard he'd been handed. These auctions are cutthroat. People take their sea turtle sponsorships very seriously. I think I can handle it, he said, scanning the list of items. You didn't tell me you donated a painting. You didn't ask, he looked down at her. You're donating the storm piece, she nodded. It was time to let it go. He didn't say anything, but his fingers brushed against hers as they moved to the bidding table. Later that night, after the band packed up and the last string of lights flickered out, Kaya found him leaning against her truck, the night warm and quiet. You won it, she said, stepping in front of him. I was bidding against a woman named Lorraine who threatened to throw her wine at me. She's been losing the art auction for 8 years straight, and she never will again. Kaya laughed, then noticed something in his other hand. You bought more than the painting. He held up a folded piece of paper. There was a silent auction item one weekend on a private sailboat stocked with champagne and food. You don't even like boats. I like you. Her chest tightened. You planning to take me? Unless you have someone else in mind. She leaned in, her hands slipping around his waist. No one else. He kissed her with quiet certainty, the kind that didn't need words, the kind that grew from something real. By the time summer settled over the coast, the rhythm of their lives had found a new beat. Kieran moved into the cottage, not all at once, but gradually. First, it was a drawer, then a shelf. Then he replaced the broken porch light without being asked, built her a paint rack out of driftwood. Put in a new sink when hers started leaking. He never announced it. He just did it like he'd always been meant to. Kaya didn't say it out loud, but she started painting more. Her brush strokes changed bolder, brighter, like something had lifted. One morning, she stepped outside to find him barefoot in the garden, shirtless, holding 2 mugs of coffee. That's illegal, she said, walking down the porch steps. What is? Looking like that before sunrise, he handed her a mug. "I've been thinking, dangerous. I want to buy the building next to the shack," she blinked. "Why? So you can expand, add a bakery or a gallery or both?" She stared at him. "You want to invest in me? I already have." Her throat tightened. "This is real for you. It's the only thing that's felt real in years." She stepped forward, setting her coffee down. "Then ask me." He looked at her, confused. "Ask you what? To marry you?" His eyes widened. "You want me to?" "I do," he laughed, breathless. "You're stealing my thunder. You took too long." He pulled her into him, hands firm at her back. "Kaya Rivers, will you marry me and never let me go?" "Yes," she whispered against his mouth. "Always." 6 months later, under an arch of sea grass and wild orchids on the bluff above the ocean, Kaya wore a dress the color of moonlight and flowers tangled in her braid. Kieran stood in a cream linen shirt and no shoes, just like the first time he walked into her world. The entire town showed up. The reception was held at the shack. Tables spilled onto the sand, lit by lanterns and laughter. Kaya danced barefoot, her cheeks flushed, her eyes never straying far from his. When she painted the next morning, the canvas came out soft and golden, like the light that had fallen on his face during their vows. He never returned to New York. Instead, he built a second kitchen behind the shack and hired a chef from Charleston to help them expand. Kaya's art studio opened next door, and her paintings sold faster than she could finish them. They built a life layered in sand and salt and stubborn love, one that didn't care about timelines or blueprints. They woke each day to the sound of waves and the smell of coffee. They fought sometimes over spice levels or whether or not to adopt the stray cat that kept sneaking into the shack's storeroom, but they always made up before sunset. And every evening, no matter how busy the day had been, they walked to the edge of the dock, barefoot, together.